Don't drink the water." Janine looked back, startled. A man stood a few paces behind her, towering over her. Kneeling at the end of the dock, nothing between her and the poisonous Nartressan sea, Janine felt a moment of vulnerability. A slight nudge would send her to her death. She couldn't see his face. The night fading, a blue glow to the east. Only a few seaside cottage lights illuminated him from the side. "I know," she replied, standing. "I'm a biologist." A dark, prominent brow dominated the face. The eyes sunk too far into their sockets. The skin was white from too little sun, the hair black as though dyed. He was clean-shaven, dressed in a spare formal that seemed too insubstantial to protect against the chill blowing off the bay. A small maritime insignia at the left breast. In the deeply sunken eyes was the hint of a smile. "You must be Dr. Meriwether," he said. "Carson, Thomas Carson, chief biologist at the Marine Institute." He jerked a thumb over his shoulder at the brightly lit building on the hilltop. "You look nothing like your vid," Janine said, wondering why she hadn't recognized him. She looked down to make sure she didn't trip over the equipment at her feet and stepped. Hands shoved her backward off the pier. As she flailed her arms for balance, she looked at him, her body falling in slow motion toward the water. His expression hadn't changed. The water enveloped her, its chill, cold fingers reaching every inch of skin. She didn't fight because she knew she was dead. The Nartressan water containing a prion that exuded a prothrombin antagonist. Her blood would stop clotting and would soon grow so thin as to seep between her epithelial cells. Within minutes, she'd be dead. Janine felt tentacles wrap her ankles and yank her downward into the darker depths, vines grasping every limb, working their way up her trunk to her shoulders, to her neck, to her head. Seaweed wrapped her head, occluded her sight. "It'll suffocate me before I bleed to death," she thought, feeling curiously unafraid. Then her world went black. Randall Simmons sat up and gasped for breath, sweat pouring off him, the remains of the nightmare dissipating from his mind. "You all right?" his wife said, sitting up and rubbing his back. "Another nightmare. Same one." "That's the 5th night in a row." He wondered how long he could keep doing this. Last night he'd stayed awake until past midnight, hoping to make himself so tired that he'd sleep through the night. "You've got to see somebody." He just grunted. She didn't understand, and he didn't expect her to. "Take a day or two off, maybe a week." He nodded in dull acknowledgement, both of them knowing he'd do no such thing, both knowing he was committed to his work. Emergency medical technician, and now having nightmares about work. How many co-workers had burned out already, traumatized by the fruitless search and rescues, the weed snatchings having left the populace terrified and helpless. He looked toward the window, a hint of morning light at the edges. 4 hours sleep, restless, dreaming of weed strands, of one wrapping his ankle and yanking him off the beach and into the surf. Randall stumbled into the bathroom, relieved himself, and looked at his reflection. Gaunt and pale, his black hair making his skin look paler than it already was. His coke came to life, the electrical implant in his ear crackling, a red alert blazing on his retinal. "Alert! All responders! Report to base!" Randall was in his boots and out the door.